This episode of the 12 Hike Podcast is brought to you by TTI Blakemore, makers of the Roadrunner Jig Head. Listen, if you've heard any of our Fat Guy in a Little Boat episodes, it's no secret that I think the Roadrunner Jig is the most effective lure you can have in your tackle box. It catches every species of fish in nearly every fishing environment. Its patented shape and underspin blade create a flash and vibration that fish cannot resist. TTI can also hook you up with premium bass, catfish, panfish, and drop shot hooks from Daiichi. I don't know if you noticed, but I threw a little pun in there. It was pretty good, I thought. TTI has you covered in everything from crappie and panfish to saltwater fishing and everything in between. Visit their website, ttiblakemore.com, to see a full-line catalog of their premium fishing lures, hooks, and fishing tackle kits. We're going to be doing 5, yeah, you heard me right, 5 TTI Blakemore Lure Kit giveaways. Be sure to visit our Facebook page, 12 Hike, to get more information on how you can be entered to win. Welcome to the 12 Hike Podcast, where we talk about all the ways you can get outdoors. I'm Zach Jenkins, and thanks for listening. Today's guests are Jeff and Jenna from the Lockwood Foundation and Jerry from Daring Adventures. They help disadvantaged, underprivileged, and disabled individuals achieve their dreams by climbing some of the highest mountains and kayaking some of the craziest streams.
Can bushwhack to them and stand on these rock spires that happen to have pretty good signal.
Yeah, well, let's try that.
It looks like we have Jenna in here.
I have joined.
Hi, Jenna.
Hey, guys.
Hi, Jenna.
Thanks for joining us, Jenna. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
So with 4 of us in here, we might have to be a little bit careful not to talk over each other, but I don't think we'll have that big of a problem doing that.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. I guess... Go ahead,
I was just
Jenna.
going to say, you can use... literally what just happened is what I was going to say happens on my podcast all the time, and then somebody will just be like, go ahead, and then the magic of editing comes in.
That's what me and Jeff were talking about. I'm going to take this thing and edit it as much as I need to.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was talking to Jeff a little bit before you guys joined. What I want to do is get a little bit of background information on each of you. Just to kind of get a feel for, what kind of background you came from, what got you into this outdoor space to begin with. So, Jeff, I was reading a little bit on the Lockwood Foundation website, and it seems like you've got a pretty interesting background.
I like to think so. I have about, 10 years of disability care experience. I've been doing the mountaineering thing, backpacking and mountaineering thing for 12 years now. I've been a mountain guide in Colorado, a permitted mountain guide. I think we're going on our 5th year. It's a small company, but it is a guiding company. I take tourists out into the mountains. And so I have a background that really facilitates what we do in the outdoor adaptive recreation space, I think. I like to think. And when we started this organization, a small group of people, we really felt that it took a certain level of understanding of these things. I also have nonprofit leadership experience. I mean, not a lot of any of this stuff, but maybe just enough to put it together into this thing that we wanted to build. And so that's basically where this all started off, was just a small group of people trying to complete what was looked at as an impossible mission.
Are you a Colorado native?
I am not. I'm one of those immigrants. I came from afar.
Hey, we're in good company then, because I'm one of those as well.
Yeah, I always say that I'm, I loved Chicago. Great theater, amazing food, culture. The sports teams are so these days, but I'm shamefully from Chicago, is what I say.
I'm from Southern Ohio, so I really can't say anything.
Are you near Van Wert at all, by any chance?
Van Wert, I think, is north of where I'm from, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, my dad's actually a pastor out in Van Wert of a huge church, absolutely enormous church, 2,000, 2,500 people per service.
Sure,
church
that's a
out
big
there.
one.
Yeah, for a small town, it's pretty sizable.
Yeah. So when you say you have a special needs caregiver background, are you talking, people with some pretty severe disabilities, or?
I would say I have a relatively broad background. I've worked with several young men and adults who have had autism, Down syndrome. I've worked with several wheelchair users with cerebral palsy. I have a pretty diverse background. It's not that I work with any particular subset of people. I work with people. That's what I always say. I work with people and provide whatever aid or care that they may need.
So, growing up in Chicago, did you use outdoor recreation while you were out there, or is that something you've started doing as you got a little older?
Well, that's actually the reason I moved to Colorado. Was I was just about fed up at a boiling point with traveling 16 hours to get to the mountains. Because if you go east of the Appalachian, that's 15 or 16 hours, depending on where you're going. Colorado is about the same. Our local forestries are pretty boring in Chicago. So, sometimes you can do a 5-hour drive down to Shawnee or 5 to 8 hours up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. But even then, you're dealing with swarms of bugs and not much for mountains. So that was ultimately why I came out here. I had finished my university education, and a week later, my lease ran out. So I had this week period to decide what I was going to do with the next time frame of my life. And so what I chose to do at that time was sell, give away, toss everything I owned, pack up what I could as quickly as possible, because I didn't have the logistical time to buy a trailer, get an apartment locked in. And I traveled out of my SUV to Colorado with basically my hiking gear, my computer, and stuff that was personally important to me.
So you were a dirtbag, is what you're saying.
I floated around Colorado. Yes, the answer is yes. I floated around Colorado for 6 weeks, camping, hammocking, sleeping on a pad under the stars, sometimes sleeping in the back of my SUV. I absolutely dirtbagged it in Colorado for a little bit. And, that was part of the plan, because I didn't have a plan. So the plan was to have no plan, explore, and find out where I was supposed to land, and just kind of leave it up to the universe, so to speak. And, things really developed quickly, because I had no clue that I'd be running a guide company and a small nonprofit 1 and 2 years later, that I would meet the people that I've met, and I would have the experiences that I've had. In fact, when I first came out here, I had no idea I would even start this 14er journey that I'm now 41 out of 58. Well, 54, 52, 58 peaks, however many you want to count, that I've done 41 of them now. I had no idea I would even start that. That was by a whim. One day I saw a big mountain, drove by it. Then, 2 or 3 days later, my friend said, "Hey, you want to do this big mountain?" It happened to be the one I had driven past in Buena Vista. And we went up it, and it was Antero Peak. And we walked a Jeep road for what felt like a full day, and then scrambled the rest of the way. So that took off. I mean, I had no clue what I was going to do with my life when I came out here. I just knew that I wanted to be involved in the outdoors, and that I wanted to be immersively involved in the outdoors. So that's where I started my business, and decided to share that with tourists, so to speak, with visitors and residents alike. Let's call them tourists of the mountains, people who had not really been there before or had limited experiences, and ultimately to share those experiences, try to find a way. This was the initial idea, to find a way that I could include the people that I had worked with in disability care into those experiences.
That's quite a story. I know we ran into someone at Glacier National Park, a young man that had just lost his internship, and me and my wife were just out on the pier fishing, and just seen this guy out there, and we started talking to him, and he had a very similar story to yours. He lost his internship, didn't have any plans. He said, "All right, I guess I'm just going to pack everything I have in my Subaru and drive until I find what I want." And that always stuck with us. That kind of shocked us at that point, because we were just, working class stiffs. We had 40-hour jobs, and the thought of just packing everything up and leaving was completely foreign to us. And that's how we ended up here in Colorado. We sold our house, and a month later no jobs, no family, no anything. We just came out here.
Being spontaneous when things are stale in life oftentimes leads to the greatest adventure, or so I believe.
Well, so far, that's been true. Jerry, we were talking a little bit about you before I started recording.
Yeah.
You run an organization called Daring Adventures.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so what's your background? How did you end up where you are now?
So it's very interesting. So my whole background, I went to the Culinary Institute in New York, and graduated, wanted to be this big old chef and all of that. And I think I lasted probably maybe a year, and I ended up taking a sabbatical, thinking, what did I get myself into? Working every single night, every single holiday. Couldn't be with my mom on Mother's Day and all that stuff. So that's, I think, when I fell into healthcare. And at that time in the 80s is when they were hiring chefs to redo the kitchens. Instead of frozen foods, they were doing scratch cooking. And so that was right up my alley, so I got to be creative and do all of that. Well, during that tenure, I was always involved in social service somehow. When I was with the healthcare, I was on the Central Arizona Shelter, the homeless board, for 17 years, serving individuals in need. And so I've really gotten a flavor for nonprofits from a social standpoint. Well, in 2008, when I retired, I answered this ad in the newspaper that said they were looking for individuals to go whitewater rafting with these teens. And I thought, oh, this is pretty cool. I'm going to be retired. I've always wanted to go whitewater rafting. I'm kind of an outdoors person, but never did a lot because I was always busy working. And I answered the ad, and going through the interview, they were saying I'd had to spend 8 weeks with the teens before the trip, 8 weeks with the teens after the trip as this mentor. And I thought, oh, this sounds pretty cool. But I was kind of greedy, and I thought, I don't know if I want to spend my first full summer of retirement, kind of working. And so I thought, oh, I'm not going to get the job, and went back to my office, and lo and behold, there's the phone call. Congratulations, you got this job. And it's like, oh gosh, what am I going to do? Well, I ended up declining it, and that was in 2008. Well, 4 years later, actually, a friend hit me up, and she says, hey, you've got some time. I've got a friend that's on this board, and they're failing, and they need some help. And you have board experience, so maybe you can help them. So I went to meet with them to see what this organization was all about. And what they were describing to me sounded very familiar. Well, long story short, it ended up being that same company that I answered that ad back to in 2008. And since then, the organization, it was the adaptive rec program for the city of Phoenix. And in 2008, that's when the economy tanked. So the city cut the adaptive rec side of their recreation program. And so this was the organization that a friend asked me to assist to help get them back on their feet after, the city cut the program, and to help them become a standalone nonprofit. So I got involved with them around 2014, as a board member. And then I told them, I says, the only way for us to really get our feet on the ground is to get a sustainable, multi-year grant. So we started putting out some grants, and sure enough, we got a grant from the Gila River Indian community. And that enabled us to really take the time to develop policies and procedures on taking individuals, on various activities and so forth, and then also build a database for our participants and donors and so forth. So I come from it on a different angle than from Jeff, of not really having the experience, but having the business side on the nonprofit. But oddly enough, everything that I've done, it's like I've done more traveling, I think, in the last 5 years, within the state of Arizona, than I have in my entire life. because we have a cabin down in Mexico. We always end up going there.